점점 추워진다.
You want to do the tour without me? So I will ask you please to stand here for a few minutes. So you can be in front of the map. But you also can stand there as you like or here. It's perfect. Are you okay like this?
Yes.
Okay. So here we have a map of the region of Champagne. I will give you some information about this region. So let me tell you first of all that we are the northern region with vineyards in this country. We are here. Thanks to that, we have in this region soils rich in chalk. So the chalk, as you probably already know, it's this mineral stone in the soil, on the ground. And the chalk is very important for the vineyard because the chalk will absorb all of the water like a sponge during the rainy season, and all of this water will be used by the vineyard during the summer, the dry season. We also get in the region of Champagne those hills that you see here, and what you see in brown color, it's all of the vineyard of the region. And as you can see here, the vineyard is always planted on the side of the hills and on the top of the hills, but never outside of the hills, as you can see here, right? And that's because we need for the grapes to get the best exposition to the sunlight. But we also need for the vineyards the fresh air coming on the top and between the hills. And then you know the main reason why we are never going to plant not even one single vineyard outside of those hills in this region is because we are a rainy region, but a real one. Here we got easily about 100 up to 150 days of rain per year, which is a lot. And too much water for the vineyard is not good neither. So by planting the vineyard on the side of the hills, we are avoiding all of the water from the rain, and we got the erosion. And that's what we are really looking for. Now, talking about vineyard and grapes, but now you know, the three main grapes in this region are the Pinot Noir, the Meunier, and the Chardonnay. But also for you to know, in Champagne, we're allowed to grow 7 different varieties of grapes. And most of the time, we never talk about the other 4 because they represent a very small part of the vineyard, like 5%. But those 4 grapes does exist. Those grapes are the Pinot Blanc, the Pinot Gris, the Petit Meunier, and the Arbanne. Those 4 are white skin grapes. But again, 95% of the growers and champagne houses will look for the 3 main grapes, Pinot Noir, Meunier, Chardonnay. So the Pinot Noir and the Meunier are the dark skin grapes. And what I mean by that, they do have a dark skin, but the inside is white. So we could get a white or a red juice out of those 2 grapes. And the Chardonnay is the white one, white on the inside, on the outside, so we provide only a clear and white juice. Let me also tell you that all of the vineyard in this region is planted inside of some villages. And those villages with vineyards, we call those villages des crus. So we got in the region of Champagne 319 crus. And out of those 319 crus, 42 of them are premier cru and 17 of them are grand cru. And here in Champagne, when we talk about grand cru, premier cru, regular cru, it's just our way to classify the quality of the grapes from this region. Because just imagine, some of the villages, like the 17 grand cru, which are here by the way, those villages, as you can see here, they will get a different but a better exposition to the sunlight than the others. So the quality of the grapes coming from this area every year will be higher in quality regarding the rest of the region. And one more thing for you to know, there is at all in the region of Champagne, at all 34,400 hectares of vineyard planted. This is it. We cannot plant anymore, at least not as much as we want, whenever we like, because l'appellation de Champagne, they rule the region, and we have to follow and to respect those rules. But out of this total amount of vineyard, 1,200 hectares belongs to Moet, Chandon. So we are the Champagne house with the largest vineyard in this region, which is good for us to produce around 20% of our champagne every year. And that's because every year we need to buy around 80% of the grapes that we use to other producers, but in the region, of course. And because of that, we are also the biggest buyer of grapes in Champagne. And as you know, right now we are here at Épernay. So the city of Épernay is known not just in France, but of course all around the world thanks to the champagne. And here in France, Épernay is also known because most of the champagne houses and most of the vineyard in this region is at Épernay and around Épernay. And just because of that, people say that Épernay is the capital of the champagne. But for you to know, the real capital of this region is the city of Reims, because Reims is the economical capital of the region of Champagne. And of course, you may find also some champagne houses and vineyards in Reims, but much less than in this part of the region. Do you have maybe any questions so far about the map, the region? Okay, so let's please continue. Let's go this way.
그거 다 똑같은 문제다. 샤도는 피노 그린이고
Pinot Noir et Meunier.
지금 다 숙성 중인 거. 뒤집어서 주워.
확실히 좋은 와인일수록 밑에 많이 파져 있다고.
감옥 같다. 근데. 아 이거 길 이렇게 있다.
별다른 와인.
You like it? Nice, huh? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the cellar. Here we are. So I was explaining in front of the map that we have a region with soils rich in chalk, right? This mineral stone. Well, for those who don't know the chalk, you can just take a look around you and it's the white wall that you see everywhere. And you know you can touch it if you like. You can put your hand like this and you can feel how cold and how wet the chalk can be. Right? But now you know. This chalk is important for the vineyard and it's also very important for the cellar. Because thanks to the chalk, we got those nice conditions in here to store the champagne for years. And those conditions must be a place like this one. So a place with a high level of humidity like here, a place with this right temperature. Right now it should be more or less like between 10 and 12 Celsius degrees. And you know, we can find this temperature in here almost all year long by the fact that we are now 22 meters on the ground, thanks to the chalk also. And then it has to be a dark place like here. Not too much light, then we have the right conditions. As you can see, this is yellow light, artificial light, without the UV, so not bad for the champagne. Right now we are standing at the oldest part of this cellar. And you can tell by looking around, it was made by hand long ago. But now you know the house was founded in 1743, and at that time, this part of the cellar here already existed. So this is the oldest part. And I also ask you to stay with me the whole time, right? And I know that when I say that, you may have some questions. But for you to know, I say that because in here we got 28 kilometers of cellar. So this is the largest champagne cellar in the world. And here we have in front of us La Galerie Impériale, the Imperial Gallery. And we call it Imperial Gallery because Napoleon I walked down this gallery with Jean-Remy Moet, who was owner of the house, mayor of the city, and that was in 1807. Since then we call it La Galerie Impériale. So please, let's go to the gallery, this way.
투어를 다 하고 있다고
자본이 자본을 낳고.
자잘한.
자본이 자본을 낳고.
여기서 딱 꺼내면 시원하겠어. 번호마다
Okay, let's stop here for a few minutes. Okay. How are you doing? Doing fine?
Fine.
Excellent. Okay, now let's talk about champagne. Okay, but before that, I would like to check quickly with you. But Colin,
Sorry.
don't worry, please.
But we're making some noise, sorry.
Don't worry, please. Okay, so before I start explaining everything about how we make the champagne in the house, I would like to check with you quickly. If you understand well the differences between the two kinds of champagne that you may find in the world, the non-vintage and the vintage. Do you know a few differences between those two?
Yes.
Tell me one, please.
The vintages were all 1 year. The grapes are 1 year.
You are right, Natalia. And the non-vintage is a blend of different years. Great. So listen, the non-vintage is a champagne that we intend to make the same year after year for a lifetime. I mean the same with the same taste, same flavors, same aromas, which is difficult to do because, you know, it's made up of grapes and grapes are different every year because 1 year grapes may be sweet, next year sour, 1 year grapes may be big, next year small. So we cannot make the same champagne just by picking the grapes. We have to blend wines. So for a non-vintage, we need to blend wines that came from different varieties of grapes, Pinot Noir, Meunier, Chardonnay. We need to blend wines that came from different villages, different crus, and we need to blend wines that came from precedent years of harvest. We need to blend wines from different years because if we want to make the same every time, we need to bring wines that came from cold years, hot years, rainy years, solar years, different kinds of years. And when we got all of those different elements and we understand how to combine them together the right way, we are able to reproduce the same champagne every time to reach the constancy. Okay, because there are not enough elements in one single year. So the non-vintage is the one that we want to make the same for a whole life. Okay? And then we have the vintage. So as you said, madame, the vintage is the one that we're going to make in some special years when we have a beautiful year of harvest. Okay? So, and that will be when we have excellent grapes. When our cellar master will decide that this year there is a nice story to tell through the champagne. So, and then it will be done with the grapes from one single year. Okay? It's a very special one that we make from time to time. For example, the latest vintage of the house, the one that you will enjoy today, it's our Grand Vintage 2016. And you will see, 2016 is the year on the label. And that was the year of the harvest. And this champagne was ready and released by the house 2 years ago. So this is the latest vintage to be released. But now you know the house was founded in 1743, right? Since then until today, this is the vintage of the house number 77 only. Yeah? Yeah, so in 282 years, we produce only 77 vintages. And that's because we need to wait until the perfect year. That's how important it is for us to wait until the perfect year. Nice. Okay, so now let me start here explaining about how we make the champagne in the house. So you know, to make champagne, we start every year with the harvest, and that's in September, because September is the month of the year when the grapes are just ready to be picked. So we pick the grapes by hand, with the help of a special scissor, of course, the sécateur, but we are not allowed to use any engine, at least not for the champagne, that's the law. Once we pick the grapes, we take the grapes quickly to the press. I say quickly because we want the grapes to arrive to the press as fresh as possible. So it has to be done in the next and following hours, and then we press. But for the champagne, we need to press the grapes really, really slowly, softly. I mean, gently as much as we can, because we want to get the first and the clearest juice coming out of the grapes. And even if the grapes are Pinot Noir or Meunier with a dark skin, we will get a completely white juice out of those black grapes by not pressing too hard. And if you press too hard, we will get an impact in the color of the grape juice, which is coming from the tannins, from the color of the skin of the grapes. And somehow, we're really looking to avoid that. But then, for a small part of the black grapes, the Pinot Noir and the Meunier, we will press in a different way. So this time, we're going to press the grapes much longer, much stronger, but we're also going to let the skin of the grapes in contact with the grape juice for a few days, 1 week, 10 days, in order for us to bring the color from the skin into the juice and to make some red juices. To use the red juices to make red wines, and to use the red wines to make champagne rosé. We're going to blend white and red wines together. Okay, so now let's imagine that we've been harvesting the grapes, pressing the grapes. Now we got the grape juices. At Moet Chandon, we store every year all of the different grape juices inside of some very big stainless steel vats. We don't use any oak anymore, it's a church of the house. So let's please imagine all of us that we got here in front of us many, many vats. Each one of those vats is filled with a different grape juice, which is coming from a different part of the region, which is also coming from a different variety of grape. And once we got all of the grape juices ready and separated inside of each vat, then the next step is the first fermentation. Now we're going to add the yeast inside of the vats, into the grape juice. The yeast is going to eat all of the natural sugar from the grape juice and is going to transform that sugar into alcohol and carbonic gas. But at this stage, we let the vats a bit open. We do it on purpose, because we want to allow the carbonic gas to escape, to go away. Because we don't want the bubbles yet. I mean, not for the moment. So let me please ask you a very simple question. Simple one. Just imagine we got the vat. We got some grape juice on the inside. We add the yeast, we create the bubbles and the alcohol, we let the bubbles go, we keep the alcohol, and then can you tell me what do we have exactly inside of the vats until now? Grape juice with alcohol, it's wine, right? Still and clear wine, easy. But you know, I'm putting it this way just because people get confused sometimes, just for you to see how easy it is to understand that to make champagne we start with wines. Because champagne is a wine, different than the others, but it's a wine. But those still wines that we use in a champagne house are not the same still wines that you are used to drink at home in the restaurant. The still wine for a champagne house is a wine, first of all, without the bubbles, but it's also a wine with much more body, structure, and mainly a wine with only 10 or maximum 10.5% alcohol. And we have to be very precise, I will tell you why. Okay, so now let's imagine that inside of the vats there is no more grape juice. Now instead we got still wines everywhere, right? Now that we got the wines, the next step is the blend. So now Benoit Weiss, our cellar master, and the winemakers, now they will start blending many of those still wines, but many of them, until they will find the right blend. The wine that they're looking for. So the wine with the right flavors, right aromas, taste. And once they will find the right formula, they will reproduce the same formula, but this time in a much larger scale. So now we can talk about hectoliters. And at the end of the year, we will get only one, still and blended wine in the house. Only one, but a big one, a huge one. Southern, and many thousands of liters of the same wine. And this is the one that we are going to use that year to make champagne. And that's how it goes every year. Because to make champagne, we need to go from grape juice to still wine, and from still wine to champagne. Because there is just no other way. So quickly, we pick the grapes, we press the grapes, we got the grape juice, we add the yeast, we transform the juices into still wines, then we pick the best of the best and we blend. And when we got the final blended wine, we can go to the next step to transform the wine into champagne. Because the first step was to create the wine. Now that we got the right wine, we can make some champagne out of it. Do you have any questions so far? No? Easy, right? Great. So let's make some champagne. This way, please.
들어보면서 알잖아. 나도 몰라.
Okay, let's stop here quickly. So this is a quick stop to show you this beautiful souvenir that we keep in the cellar. And as you can see here, that was a gift from Napoleon I to Jean-Rémy Moet, who was owner of the house and the mayor of the city. So we know that Napoleon I brought this beautiful wooden barrel from Portugal in 1810 as a gift with port wine on the inside, but now of course it's empty. And you know, Napoleon I used to say about the wine and about the champagne, he used to say that we deserve it after a victory, but we may also need it after a defeat. We never know, right? We need to be ready in life. Okay, so please, let's continue this way.
이제 한국 아니라서 착각해도 소리 안 나죠.
그치.
그거 하자.
진짜.
근데 나폴레옹이 좋아해서 픽해가지고 퍼지는 거. 샴페인 지방에 20%다 가져갔으면 진짜 지역 대유지다.
시장이 나니까.
So, you know, as I said upstairs, we are celebrating very big, and that's why we brought more art for you. And this time, the artist is right here, it's Daniel Achat. So Daniel Achat is not just an artist, he's an architect. He's from New York, and he travels all around the world to show his art. And this time, he had a beautiful collaboration with us. So for this occasion, Daniel Achat wanted to represent the chalk. Why the chalk? Because the chalk is the base in the region. You know, we need the chalk to provide the water for the grapes. We need the chalk to create the right conditions in the cellar. And then Daniel got inspired with few elements he saw in this house. And one of those elements, we saw it now, which is the wooden barrel from Napoleon I. Oh, that's very noisy, I'm sorry. Okay, so this here is Bilbao. Bilbao, I'm sure you saw this in the region. Bilbao is a stone more or less like this, with the name of the house written on it. And that's what you will find in front of every vineyard that we own in this region. Okay? So people know that this vineyard belongs to this house, like the other house. This is the Chandon de Savon. So the Chandon de Savon, it's a beautiful house. It's about 20 minutes driving from here to the south. It's actually in the middle of La Côte des Blancs, which is the most expensive land to grow grapes and champagne. We grow mainly Chardonnay. And this used to be once the house to haunt for the mayor for the weekends, and today it became the very luxurious Chateau de Savon. That's where we receive all of our guests. This is the foundation date of the house, 1743. You know, this is the brand with the English crown I told you upstairs, which is part of the brand. The star from the Halley Comet, 1811, is right here, which is also part of the brand. Here. And this is La Renommée. La Renommée, it's an angel. She does represent her success. She's in the sky flying with the wings, and with the trumpet, she's announcing everybody, here we are. If If you want to have a picture, please do it now, and let's continue this way.
Are the crystals part of the shop?
No, it's just to make it.
It's from the
It's just a
artist.
piece of art. No. This is not happening.
아, 뭐 부서진 게 아니고 그냥 저렇게 한 거라.
나름 괜찮은
It's always a happy situation. Okay, are you doing fine? Really? Okay. So let's continue. So until now we've been basically creating some still wines, blending some of them, but now we can say that we got the final blended wine, so now we are going to make some champagne out of it. Now we will do what we call in French la mise en bouteille et la prise de mousse, which means that now we are going to bottle the still wine. So now we put the wine inside of the bottles. But before we close the bottles, we need to add on the inside of each bottle a very small amount of sugar and yeast that we call in French liqueur de tirage. It's not a liqueur as it may sound. It's made out of the same still wine that we got inside of the bottles. Then we empty some of the bottles inside of a little vat and we mixed with some sugar and some yeast. Okay? So we are basically going to add a little amount of this liquid sugar and yeast inside of each bottle. Then we close the bottles. Then we bring the bottles into the cellar. And then we let the bottles maturing for a really long time, like all of those bottles that you see here. Some people call this aging. We don't, because to us aging will come after. For the moment, we're going to improve and to elevate the wine. So you know, this is the longest step. It can take many, many years, but this is the step that will lead us to the product that we know as champagne. Okay, what do we need to know about this maturing process? We need to know that l'appellation de champagne, the law in this region, it's much better like this, huh? The law in this region, they want us, if we want to make a non-vintage champagne, they want us to let the bottles in the cellar maturing for not less than 15 months. Less than 15 months, by the law, it's not champagne yet, and we're not allowed to sell it as champagne. So at Moet Chandon, to make our imperial champagne, our non-vintage one, we let the bottles in the cellar for 2 up to 3 years, a bit more. And by the law, if you want to make a vintage champagne, we need to let the bottles in the cellar for minimum 3 years. Less than 3 years, by the law, it's not vintage yet, and we cannot sell it as vintage. So at Moet Chandon, to make our grand vintage champagne, the one that you will enjoy today, we let the bottles in the cellar for 6 up to 7 years, a bit more. We also have in the house a grand vintage collection. This one will stay in the cellar, maturing for 14, 15 years. But you know there is no limit for that. We can mature for as long as we like. 300 years if you want. But it can never be less than 15 months or less than 3 years by the law. And now let me ask you a little question. Do you understand what's the purpose of doing this? Why we let the bottles in the cellar for that long? What's the goal? Why is there a law? Please. Okay, that will happen. But that can take us like 6 weeks. So that will happen, but that's not the reason why. Listen, we let the bottles in the cellar for that long because we really want to create some complexity in terms of flavors, aromas, taste. We want to improve the flavors, okay?
That's part of the fermentation process?
So the fermentation takes about 6 weeks to create the bubbles and that ball, okay? But we want to go much more than that because we want to create some complexity in terms of flavors, first of all. The question is how we do that. So what we really need to know is that inside of all of the bottles that we see here, and you know, this is not just for us, this is for every champagne house. Inside of the bottles that we store in the cellars, there is not just champagne on the inside. Otherwise, there is nothing for us to do in here. Inside of the bottles, of course, we got champagne, but we also got sediments.
Right.
Yeah. This is what we got inside of each bottle, and this is the only reason why we made sure. Do you know where the sediments are coming from? It's not coming from the grapes.
Yes.
100% dead yeast. You are right. This is la liqueur de tirage, the yeast and the sugar that we have. So let me explain quickly. The yeast is a living microorganism. It's microscopic. It's invisible. We cannot see it just like that. But when there is no more sugar to it for the yeast, then the yeast will die. And then the yeast will rest at the bottom of the bottle. And then it will appear, because when all of the yeast is dead, Together, it will create the sediment that we call in French le lit. And the lit will appear after more or less 6 weeks. Because it takes about 6 weeks for the second fermentation to happen. Okay? So basically, when we bring the bottles in here, during the first 6 weeks, the yeast eats the sugar turns into bubbles and alcohol, and after the first 6 weeks, we got everything. We got the bubbles, we got the rest of the alcohol, and the yeast is there. And then the yeast will appear on the bottom of the bottle. And then we let the dead yeast on the inside of the bottles for the next years to come without touching the bottles again, because during those next years, we are going to allow a big part of the sediment, not really all of it, but a big part of it to decompose, to dissolve, to disintegrate, and to integrate the champagne. And by doing this, through those years, those sediments will release many flavors, many aromas. But you know, there is more, because the longer we let the bottles in the cellar, the more the bubbles will turn brown, tiny, thinner, the more the color will get darker. The texture also will become kind of heavier, but mainly, all of the flavors and all of the aromas somehow will be really developed and complex. So we do all of this to create this nice complexity that you know as champagne. Okay, any question? No? Easy? Great. Okay, one more step, and good news, you will be drinking champagne. This way. Yeah.
앨범으로는 재밌을 것 같아요.
난 처음부터 와인을 그 알코올 만드는 과정에서 그 발효를 시켜가지고 한 줄 알았는데 와인을 만들어 놓고 다시 발효를 시킨다는 거니까.
이스트를 넣어가지고
원래 이스트를 넣어서 하는 거잖아요.
와인은?
아 와인은 그냥 안 되죠.
스틸 와인까지는 만드는 게
이스트를
Okay, so
쓰진
ladies and
않고.
gentlemen, in this final step, what are we going to do exactly? So I said that the sediments will decompose through the years, right? But we also need to know that even if we let the bottles in the cellar for doesn't matter how long, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, it doesn't matter. Always at the end, we're going to find some sediments left in the bottles that will not decompose. It will decompose, but never till the end, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to remove the sediments left. And to do that, we need first of all to turn the bottles, the riddling. And the riddling can be done in two ways. We can do it with a traditional way, which is this one, with the wooden rack that we call in French pipette. So if we're going to use the pipette, in that case, we have in this house a team of riddlers. They will come into the cellar. They will take all of the bottles that are ready, and they will put the bottles into the wooden rack. But not like this. This is the final position. The first position is always like this. So, as you can see, I'm not allowed to touch those bottles. I can use only this one. But because I want to show you how it's done, I will ask you please to come with me and I can show you here. So, the first day, all of the bottles will be like this. Like this, okay? And then they will come back into the cellar every 2 days for about 3 weeks, and every 2 days they will turn the bottles from one side to the other or one side, and this is because first of all we want to remove the sediments on the inside. But each time they will have to inclinate the bottle just a little bit upside down like this to start bringing the sediments down. 2 days after that they will do the same, and again, and again, again, again. And at the end, all of the bottles will be in this final position, which means that now all of the sediments will be collected down here. Okay, so we turn the bottles to bring the sediments down. So basically, it will pass from here in 3 weeks to here. Okay? This is how it's done by hand. So if you don't mind, let's go back there. But the riddling, as I said, can also be done with the machines, with the gyro pallets. So those are big robots with a big metallic case. We fill the case with about 500 bottles at a time like this, and then the case will turn every hour, left and right, up and down, day and night, 24 hours a day. And in about 5 days, the process is over. But the purpose remains the same, to bring all of the sediments down. And once we got all of the sediments here, now we are ready to disgorge, to remove the sediments. To do so, we got the machines. Those machines will hold about 1,000 bottles at a time like this, and those machines will introduce only this part of the bottles. The neck of the bottles will be introduced inside of a very cold liquid. It's minus 27 degrees glycol. So just imagine that in about 5-7 minutes, we're going to freeze this part of the bottle here. Here, nothing will happen. It's too fast, too quick. But again, After a few minutes, we're going to create a little piece of ice, big like this in here, and inside of the ice we got the sediments, which are frozen and trapped inside of the ice. And then the machine will quickly turn the bottles, will open the bottles, the ice will be quickly ejected, it will just pop out, thanks to the pressure of the carbonic gas. Once the ice and the sediments is out, the machine will very quickly introduce a small amount of liquid sugar that we call liqueur de dosage, no tirage. So this is mainly about sugar, there is no yeast. And then the machine will very quickly cork the bottle for the last time. But you need to know that even if it's a vintage or a non-vintage one, the champagne is just not ready yet. Because now we need to bring back again all of the bottles into the cellar one last time. And now we're going to let the bottles like this resting for about 3 up to 6 months more. Because we need some time for the sugar to dilute well. And only after this resting time, then we got the machines upstairs that will wash the bottles, will label the bottles, and bottles will be ready. Bottles will be ready to be exported, sent, open, drink, enjoy. So this is how we do it. As you can see, it takes a lot of time, but this is the only way possible for us to reach this kind of product, this kind of quality. Do you have any question, please? Okay, was clear?
Now you do the process with a machine.
Yes.
But in the past, how?
You mean
they
to
do
freeze,
it?
to remove the yeast?
Yeah.
Okay. So, you know, this method I'm explaining now was approved in the region by the year 1897, so long ago. But at that time, of course, no glycol, so it was done with very cold water, some ice, salt, alcohol, and other things. But the way that it was done before that, the way that we do it today for some of our bottles, it's done by hand. We call it in French, dégorgement à la volée. So let me explain how it was done and how we do it for some of our bottles. So first of all, you need to agree with me that no matter what, we are never going to fill any bottle till the top. We always leave a little empty room, right? Okay. When we turn the bottles, at the end, bottles will be like this. That means that sediments now are here, and this empty room came here, right? So let's call this a bubble of air, for example. The disgorger will hold the bottle very carefully like this, without removing too much the sediments in here. And he's going to bring the bubble of air from the bottom of the bottle with this movement up to the middle. So when the bubble of air is here, sediments are here, okay? With a very special tool, he will remove the cork, and then with a quick and precise movement, it's less than half a second, it's just a movement. He's going to bring the bubble of air again from here up to here, like this. When the bubble of air will be here, sediments will be gone. It's a movement. But you know, if they let it flow too much, we have a waste of champagne and that's bad. Or if they bring the bottle back too soon and we have some sediments coming back, game over, we throw the rest. There is nothing that we can do. But we freeze most of our champagne. But let me complete this question because I think it's interesting for all of you. You know, so long ago, at the very beginning of the champagne, like 300 years ago, absolutely no one knew how to remove the sediments, not even by hand. So the first bottle of champagne were sailed with the sediments on the inside. And you know, this is the only reason why today we are drinking champagne in the glasses that we're using today. You know this stem? This stem had one purpose only. This stem at the beginning was empty and a bit wider. So when you pour the champagne with the sediments, you had to wait a few seconds until the sediments will reach the bottom of the stem, and then you're good to drink without swallowing the sediments. And when they understood how to remove the sediments by hand, then they decided to close the stem but to keep it. Because champagne you drink fresh, you don't want to warm the champagne, the glass with your hands, right? So that's the purpose of the stem. At the beginning was to collect the sediments. It's kind of an evolution. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Please, any other question? Okay, so let's do something. Let's go for the champagne tasting, and if you have any other question, I will stay with
찌꺼기
you.
맛을
Okay?
모르는
Great.
난 찌꺼기
Perfect. Let's go this way, please.
거. 그거 숙취 안 좋게.
공수가 많이
그냥 그 탄산가스 집어넣으면 이런 걸 안 하고 수율도 안 좋아서.
진짜 레볼루션 이게로 뽕다가
We keep thousands of each one was released. So the first one is from the oldest one is actually 1892.
유익인데 오빠?
Yeah, that's important.
여기 다 있네. 찌꺼기 저기 밑에 보이죠? 저 먼지인 줄 알았는데 다 찌꺼기인가 보네.
Depends on the year.
계속 돌려주는 것도 신기하다.
근데 여기 쌓여있는 애들은 어떻게 돌리냐?
어느 정도 쌓인 애들은
얘들도 해서 팔 거 아니야? 많이 있는데.
병에 넣는 사이즈는 아니고 그냥 안 되는 숙성적인 거.
그러니까. 얘네들은 그래서 이제 쑥 들고 가서 이렇게 기계에 넣으면 싹싹 돌려주면서
이렇게 뽕뽕뽕 하고 병에 넣고 해봐야 숙성시키는 그리고 올드치즈 먼저 하면 원지 싸고 있어.
그러니까 좀 오래 냈던 애들이라 그렇겠지.
숙성시키는 이거를 오히려 막 7만 원 싸는데
진짜 많다.
짜발랑 공장이랑 다른 느낌이야.
여긴 먼지가 많아. 이거
나도 와이너리 이렇게 가봤다고 똑같이 안 돌아다니잖아. 그냥 껴보고 싫어하고 그냥 막 히스토리 설명하고 그러는데
이거 곰팡이가 많다.
Okay, let's continue this way, please.
그런 거 같다. 폐에 안 좋을 것 같아. 살이 많아서 괜찮을 수도 있어.
It's a cellar. Well, this way, we're going.
I don't know.
Wait, this way. Stay with me. Please, come closer. So if you, just be careful with the bottles, please. So if you remember well, at the beginning, I showed you the oldest part of the cellar, right? So as you can see here, this is less old because now we have two levels where we can store bottles in both levels. We have little electric cars. They will go around the cellar. They can go in both levels, okay? So that was the oldest part. This is less old, as you can see. Please, we're going this way.
Okay. Sorry.
온걸 찾아. 아 그래? 그래서 미나가 막 설명해 준 거야 나한테?
아니 오빠 어차피 달아줘야잖아.
추워? 프랑스식 영어인 거야?
세컨드 스공이라고
아 그래? 아 그랬으면 진짜 못 알아듣겠을 거야.
불어 헛버스
아 그래?
있었어.
확 갑자기 온도가 확 올라간다. 이 정도만 올라가도 갑자기 온도 확 올라가잖아.
노래 그 폐를 진짜 안 들을 것 같아.
저 지하 감옥 같아.
근데 진짜 비릴겠다. 차가워. 냄새. 나가니까 냄새가 나.
여기 또 뭐야? 여기도 여기 자동으로 막 이렇게 하는 거 같다. 여긴 좀 제품 같다. 저기 뭐야? 안에 그
그 조그마?
코르크 뚜껑도 되게 색깔이 있는 것이 원래 아까 밑에 있는데 그냥 코르크가 박혀 있었는데 여기는 그
전에 그 숙성하는 시트 느낌.
파는 거 같은 느낌이 있어야 돼.
That's it.
Thank
Avec
you.
plaisir, madame. It's a pleasure. Madame.
이미 다 준비가 돼. 2개 어디 앉을까? 여기 앉을까?
Welcome. Please make yourself comfortable because, as you know, this is the best moment of the day, right? It's time for you to enjoy champagne now. So let me please introduce you Isolda. has poured for you two beautiful glasses of champagne of the latest vintage of the house, the number 77, which is the 2016 vintage. Okay, so we're going to bring the glasses to the tables, okay, and we can start the taste. Je peux commencer à proposer ça? Madame. Mesdames. Your vaccines are... How do you say?
오, 잘 찍었다.
VIP 투어.
야, 80유로 VIP요.
It's origin. France.
어우, 졸려.
I'm coming, madame.
졸리다고? 근데 완전 많이 인사했어.
You're welcome. Madame, this is for you.
와, 뽕이 장난 아니다.
그러게, 진짜 갓 딴 거라 가지고.
뽀글뽀글스 느낌. 아 진짜 뽀글 계속 올라. 더블
Can we bring the kids juice? Grape juice? Voilà. Et soda?
Oui.
On va servir aux enfants un petit Okay, do you all have the both glasses of champagne with you? Yeah? Okay, I will not let you wait any longer. That was enough, right? So, we're going to start with the white, of course. So, first of all, thank you for coming. It was a pleasure. Something. Cheers.
맛있어. 평소에 먹던 무해장동 맛이 아니야. 그치?
역시 딴 데서 먹는, 아까 여태까지 먹었던 거가 제일 맛있어.
And you don't have to finish the white to switch to the rosé. Do it whenever you like, but it's always better to start with the white.
다 먹고 먹는다.
So, the first one is this one. Vintage, the it says. So when you see this photo, you already notice one big thing, that you have it here on the label. That means already that it's a vintage. It means that it's a blend from the grape from one single year. Okay? Why 2016? Well, because our cellar master Bernard West decided that it was a nice year to bring the story to you through the champagne. So he decided to create a vintage in that year. As you know, we always blend the three main grapes together for every champagne. For this one, we also blend the three together, but in different proportions. That will depend on the year. This is a grand vintage. Grand vintage means that the bottles will stay in the cellar, as I said, 6 to 7 years maturing. So the minimum amount of time is 3. We go much more because we want to create a nice complexity for you to enjoy, but not that much neither, so you can also enjoy the champagne in different occasions. So this is extra brut. Extra brut is what you will find in front of every bottle of champagne, doesn't matter the brand or the style. This is at the end. When we open the bottle to remove the yeast, we add the sugar, liqueur, the dosage, this is it. So the less sweet that you can find is extra brut. Extra brut must be by the law between 1 and 6 grams of sugar per liter. Here, extra brut for us is only 5 grams, so this is dry. Then we got the brut. The brut must be between 7 and 12 grams. Here we have only 7 grams for the brut, which are our non-bitters. And then we got the demi-sec. So demi-sec is very sweet. Demi-sec must be by the law between 35 and 50 grams. And here, because we are very generous, we have 47 grams. And we call it Nectar Imperial, which is the perfect champagne that you can pair with any sweet dish, okay, with a cake This is the one that can match perfectly well. And then we have the vintage rosé. So we're talking about the same year, okay, the same land, but for this one we have around 17 to 20% of red wine into the wine. And trust me, not just to change the color. This will change absolutely everything. Because now you know it's no longer about this nice complexity, but it's much more about the fruitiness that you will find here thanks to the red wine, to the black grapes. Because black grapes are fruity and that's what you will feel here. And if you feel this one a bit sweeter than the white, it's normal. Because we still have 5 grams, but you know tannins are kind of sweet, so you may notice a bit sweeter, but this is coming from the red wine. Otherwise, it's also 5 grams of sugar per liter. So now I will let you enjoy the moment. We have 30 minutes to enjoy the tasting, which is enough time. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm here. And if you want to come behind the bar for some pictures with the Moet Chandon behind you, please feel free. Okay? So, cheers again. Cheers.
Cheers.
Santé. To you, to all of you.
너무
Patricia. Cheers.
찐찐.
찐찐.
짱때는 좀 아저씨들 거.
Salud.
청바지.
친친이 짠.
찐찐.
너무 맛있다. 근데 진짜 맛있다.
En fait, c'est les travaux, ils sont en train de verser, tu sais, au-dessus. Il faut le aussi, ça fait des qui
Ouais.
sûr. On leur avait communiqué les plages horaires où il ne fallait pas connaître notre activité. Et ils ont recommencé à verser peut-être 10 minutes plus tard avec hier. Et donc, je l'ai changé quelqu'un, ça s'est arrêté rapidement.
Ouais, peu après que je vous ai vu partir, ils ont arrêté. 5 minutes après.
C'est efficace alors.
Ouais.
근데
Vous l'avez
확실히 그 가스 아니어서 그런지 똑같으면 이게 더부룩하지도 않아. 맥주 먹으면 막 이런
C'était dans
거
la
잘
petite
못
de ce matin.
먹잖아.
Ce que je pense que je peux parler, c'est que là où on en parle, c'est même pas là où on était, c'est quand on a la
우리
bouteille
맨날
grecque.
먹던 그 맛없는
Là, ça résonne de partout. Ouais.
맛없지?
Ouais.
신맛 나고 막 그런 맛 없지?
Non, parce que moi je pensais que c'était normal. Enfin, je veux dire.
바디감 있는데 프루티한 느낌?
Normalement, on leur avait demandé de ne pas faire des travaux pendant nos heures de visite.
Ouais.
Donc, je reverrai demain.
우리가 찍은 어떻게 보이지?
Ok.
너무 맛있다.
And if you want me to take a picture of you, let me know. I can take pictures of you. No worries. As you walk. As you walk. This is like my second job, you know.
같이 와줘서 고마워. 너무 좋은데? 내일 또 혼자 먹으면 더 맛없는 거야.
더부룩혀.
어?
더부룩혀.
진짜 맛있다. 근데 진짜 샴페인 어떻게 그 나는 자연스럽게 발효가 되는 건지 알았는데 이렇게 어쨌든 이스트랑 설탕을 넣는 신기하다.
그래도 안 단 것도 신기하지.
그 밑에 얼음 만들어서 뻥하고 바로 내보는 게 그것도 신기하죠. 그 기압 차이 때문에 BM을 뻥하고 나가요.
You're happy. Cheers. You're welcome. Did the babies receive some juice? Is it good? You like it? Yeah? It's Chandon grape juice. The original. Good one. You speak Spanish? Italian, okay. You want to have a picture over there? Please, come.
We want to do what you did. Shoes in the middle. Shoot over a little bit.
저기가 청바지 아니야?
So you can see the sign. Yeah, move over.
평소에 먹던 거랑 다른 게 너무 신기해.
아니야, 아닐 수도 있어.
똑같은 걸 수 있다고?
우리가 이렇게 시음했던 거랑은 다르.
아니 그 한국에서 먹은 모에샹도 맛이랑 다르다.
옷들은 라벨이 안 예뻐.
아, 그 나포 세일이라 그런 거 아니야?
그럴 수도 있겠구나.
또 나포 세일 그거 라벨 같은데?
아.